said, "Stop it. I am not in your custody any longer." The word isn't custody, it's captivity. Here is Franklin, 78 years old. He offered his life for his country, and he went all the way from Normandy Beach on D-Day, all the way across France and Belgium and into Germany as far as Weimar. And he was never captured by Germans. He has to come home to his own country and be put into captivity. So I told her I was not under her captivity any longer, and I went over to the table, and in a civilized way, I opened up the briefcase, I looked at the papers, I looked at the list, I went through each item, and I checked them off, and I signed it. And then there was another page of things. So I signed that. They want receipts, but when you go into the courthouse and they take your recorder, they don't give you a receipt. Is there something wrong here with the United States Marshal Service and with the Pinkertons and with the Fraudulent Bureau of Investigation, the FBI? Is there something wrong here? And so my briefcase was open, and Grossman, the lawyer who'd been appointed and upon whom I reserved my decision to consent, he was reading a paper from Lisa Margaret Smith. It was a report and recommendation, and he was reading it. But now my civil rights and my privacy had been invaded enough that day, had been violated enough that day, so I just took the paper and turned it over on its back. And he said, "I'm sorry." So I said, "Here's one you can read," and that was my civil lawsuit, Glendora versus BRUISER Ken, the one that I read to you on television last week. And so those matters were taken care of, and the three goons gathered themselves together. That would be Kwiatkowski and Jill Doe and Peter Grupe, G-R-U-P-E or P-A. And Jean Ann came and said that they were going to send us back by car service to Uniondale so that we wouldn't have to ride with those three goons. And that was wonderful. And I don't know whether how that came about or who arranged it, whether the judge had something to say about it, but we were going back in a private car service to Uniondale, where we had left our 1980 Lincoln that morning at 10 o'clock. It was a good thing I got you a nice shot of the Uniondale courthouse, because I thought I was going in there to be helped by the FBI. Instead, I went in there to be ambushed by these double-crossers. And I was able to go to the bathroom in privacy for the first time. And then I went downstairs and out on the sidewalk and waited for Denise car service. But it didn't come, and I went back, and Murray, by this time it's about 6:15, and Murray said that she would be through in court shortly, and then she'd come down and take care of it and make sure the car service came. And when I went back down, Franklin was in the car service, Denise car service. It was a nice old Mercury Grand Marquis, something like our Lincoln, but it was a station wagon. And it felt so good to get in that car and be next to Franklin. And the young man who drove us, there was confusion about his name. His last name is Batista, and about his first name, whether it was Julio or what it was. But anyway, it was nice. And we had to talk about how to get back to Uniondale, because he's not familiar with Long Island. So I guess he got us onto the LIE somehow. He got us onto something, the BQE, and onto the LIE, and onto the Grand Central, and onto the Northern State, and to the Meadowbrook, and to Uniondale. We left Brooklyn at 6:30. We arrived in Uniondale at 7:30. Julio was a good driver, and it just felt so good. I asked Julio to wait for us to see if any of these thugs had bothered our car in any way, but the tires seemed to be all intact, and the Lincoln started right up. And on the Lincoln was a note from Richard Fenton. And he said, I live 5 minutes away from here. Call me, please. And we wanted to, but we were in no shape to. We had to get the program to Hicksville because the program was going on the next night. And we came there, and Anthony or Andrew and another guard that we knew let us in at 111 New South Road, and we went down and put the tape into Diane Bennett's mailbox. I saw Jim Bennett, and I saw Pat Golino, and I told Pat Golino how nice he was to go over the operation, how to go from 8 mil to 3/4 with Dr. Curley, and I asked Jim Randolph to give Pat a raise. And then we left several happy books for people who walked by to take Glendora happy books. And then we got into the Lincoln and went to Dr. Curley to thank her and her husband for all of the telephone calls that they had made. They really activated the network, and they really had a telling effect down in Brooklyn. And so we had to thank Dr. Curley for that. Maybe by 9:30 we were on the Northern State, and maybe by 10:30 we were in White Plains. And we took care of the cats, poor cats, who had been abandoned all this time by this captivity here in the United States of America. I am so sad for our country that this was done under its name. And I think 11:20, I went to bed and to sleep. But by 12:20, I was awake, thinking of all of the terrible things that had happened under the flag of the United States. And so I got up and I wrote my counterclaim. And it's 50 pages long. And I will have to read that to you. One more thing, one insert. There was a call from a Carol Eisenberg of Newsday saying that she was writing about the incident and that she wanted to hear from us. And I thought it was, so I called back, acknowledged the call, but there was just a telephone answering machine there. But that is so dumb. Here we are with a chain around my waist, in handcuffs and locked in a cell. How are we going to call her back and give her our side of the story? So I stayed up all night Friday, all night. I had 1 hour of sleep, and I wrote out this counterclaim. We're going to stop and have our 3 jokes as always. These thugs are not going to take that away from us. At the lodge meeting, the announcement was made that we regret to inform you that the grand invincible potentate will not be at the lodge meeting tonight. His wife won't let him out of the house. And John wanted to give his wife a bouquet for their 25th wedding anniversary. And so he asked the wife, what is your favorite flower? And the poor, tired housewife said, Pillsbury. And Marilyn said to her husband, George, this is the 7th time you've been up to that buffet table. Aren't you ashamed of yourself and brought back a big plate of food every time? He says, oh, no, honey. I tell him it's for you. Now, here it is, folks. This is the counterclaim. And as I say, it's 50 pages long. But just let me tell you, first of all, that I started out with, or no, I guess I sort of finished up with this. A petition to Judge Robert Levy, United States of America against Glendora, Buell, and Franklin Buell. Petition by Glendora for the immediate arrest of Kenneth H. Mildworm. Upon the affixed counterclaim by Glendora and her answer to the complaint of March 5th, 1997, Glendora respectfully requests that an arrest warrant issue, so that Kenneth H. Mildworm may be dealt with according to the law, truth, and justice. Dated White Plains, New York, March the 7th, 1997. Yours in truth, Glendora. With the Long Island address of 1395 New York Avenue, Huntington Station, New York, 11746, 516-425-0304. And now, here is the counterclaim, which, as I told you, 50 pages. Jury trial demanded. Pursuant to Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, I don't know the criminal rules. I've never been involved in a criminal action. Rule 13, Glendora files the within counterclaim against BRUISER, Ken Mildworm, and Thomas Kwiatkowski, Peter Grupe Jill Doe, so-called FBI agents, and others. And let me just show you the counterclaim rule, the civil counterclaim rule. This is an uncivil action. Kenneth Mildworm lied. He perjured himself. This counterclaim is filed by Glendora in behalf of herself and of her husband, Franklyn. There is no declaration anywhere made known to Glendora by Kenneth Mildworm under penalty of perjury. Nowhere does Glendora have a record that Kenneth Mildworm is telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help him God, or otherwise. Glendora and Franklyn were never served with a copy of the complaint. Glendora's rights and Franklyn's rights to due process were heinously violated. Glendora and Franklyn were ambushed. Tom Kwiatkowski deceived us, lied to us, committed fraud and misrepresentation. As an employee of the United States of America, he betrayed our country. We joyously thought the FBI was going to help us prosecute BRUISER Kenneth Mildworm for his criminal, needless, demented assault of this 68-year-old woman and 78-year-old man because we wanted a receipt. He misrepresented himself on this all the way, as evidenced on audio tape 864-1. He enticed us willfully, knowingly, maliciously of the dearest American treasure we have, justice. This is Kwiatkowski. He missed the 2 p.m. appointment of March the 5th, 1997, Wednesday, with a lie of profusely apologize. What can you do? At the mercy of these lawyers. I had to go to court to Brooklyn suddenly, all on audio tape 864-1. And canceling our appointment for Wednesday, what was he doing? Behind our back and traitorously, he was getting a warrant for our arrest without our having been heard. Thomas Kwiatkowski acted in bad faith. He's a disgrace to the United States of America, and he should be discharged. Glendora said, what about the 1st Precinct? They are going to help us. Said Kwiatkowski, we've taken over. It happened on federal property. Bad faith, misrepresentation. In short, Thomas Kwiatkowski is a sleaze and is not fit to represent the United States of America. And if that's so, why, when we called the FBI in Manhattan on Thursday, the 20th, and we called the FBI in Melville, why did both of them say, oh, we don't take care of that, we have nothing to do with that? But now when we have this machination going with Mildworm pressuring the U.S. Marshal Service, and the U.S. Marshal Service pressuring the Fraudulent Bureau of Investigation, then all of a sudden the FBI says, we take care of it. I have a witness I want with us, quote unquote, while we tell you about the incident, said Glendora to Kwiatkowski. No witnesses, said Kwiatkowski. Well, I want some record. I want to record it. Kwiatkowski, you can record it. What happened to that, folks? We get there expecting the help of the big and wonderful FBI. Hurried into a back door underground and thrust in front of a phalanx of menacing, dehumanized thugs. We are told we are under arrest. It is March the 6th, 1997, Thursday at 10:03 a.m. Anno Domini, the year of our Lord, at the United States Brute House, 2 Uniondale Avenue, Uniondale, New York. We are not given any charges. We have done nothing wrong. We have broken no laws. We are innocent and injured. A paper is thrust under Glendora's nose. She starts to read it. The United States of America versus Glendora and Franklyn Buell. Glendora said, you have it backwards. Deceiver Kwiatkowski says, no, you're the one. Glendora tries to read the paper and it is snatched from her by a person she finds out later to be Peter Grupe. Quote, you are under the custody of the FBI, unquote. No, this is not custody, this is captivity. This is captivity of a United States citizen who has done no wrong and who has been ambushed by a liar. Glendora's husband is taken away from her. Counterclaim. What God has joined together, let no man put asunder. 42 years ago, Franklyn and Glendora were married on Christmas Day in Wellesley Hills, Massachusetts. Counterclaim. Glendora has not read what she is charged with. She is not given a complaint. She is given any paper long enough to read before it is snatched from her by Neanderthal Peter Grupe. And he snatched it from her 4 times between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. Well, this is page 5, and this is point 18, counterclaim. Glendora is denied due process. Glendora's rights under the 5th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, defiled by these hoods, are violated. Counterclaim. Glendora's right to equal protection of the law is violated. 14th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. The innocent and injured are arrested. The bruiser, the assaulter, the criminal is not. Glendora and Franklyn asked the 1st Precinct to arrest bruiser Ken Mildworm. Mildworm, his name is spelled M-I-L-D-W-O-R-M, Kenneth H. Gets protection of the law. Glendora and Franklyn do not. Glendora's Miranda rights are read to her by abrasive Peter Grupe. He sneers, he insults, he verbally abuses. Counterclaim. Glendora does not waive her rights. Counterclaim. And then when she exercises her right to remain silent, she is threatened and cajoled and intimidated. When we get to Brooklyn, we'll tell the judge, and he won't release you this afternoon. Is that true, Judge? This counterclaim is against Peter Grupe and Jill Doe. All of Glendora's possessions are stolen from her by these 3 savages, even her notepad and pen, so that she was unable to write down Jill's last name. glasses and my files I had with me to take to the Uniondale clerk, United States District Court, Eastern District of New York, counterclaim, whom I was never to see that day. Innocent and injured, we are further abused by Neanderthals under pose of the United States of America. Counterclaim. Glendora's 2 microcassette recorders were snatched from her. Counterclaim. Kwiatkowski, yes, you can record it. But these thugs did not want a record of their brutality. Betrayed, shocked, incredulous, Glendora looked each in the eye. But not one dared to face her scrutiny of their soulless eyes. Counterclaim. To coerce Glendora to capitulate, she was threatened with handcuffs. What reason was it to handcuff a 68-year-old female? Counterclaim. To coerce Glendora to capitulate her right to remain silent, she was threatened with, quote, "We're going to lock you up in a cell," unquote. And she's never been even told what she is charged with. Counterclaim. Glendora and Franklyn have the right to face their accuser. In this case, a wild, demented, unfit, 190-pounder, Kenneth H. Mildworm. Taunted by bully Peter Grupe, savage Jill Doe. If she's not going to answer our questions, then we won't answer hers. Counterclaim. Puerility. Grupe repeated this to Kwiatkowski 1.5 hours later. Grupe is not qualified to represent the United States of America. Glendora had to warn these 3 brutes several times not to touch her body, badly bruised by Mildworm. Glendora never physically resisted the abuse she was insanely subjected to by these 3 thugs, nor by bruiser Ken Mildwood. There was no call to touch Glendora's body. Counterclaim. There are still 3 bumps, 4 bumps, 4 fingers of Mildworm, and this is 3 weeks later. And these bumps are still sore, where he went way, way down into the soft tissue, to the bone. Counterclaim. Franklyn is under the custody of Glendora, 42 years. We have been married. Glendora is under the custody of Franklyn. To wrench husband and wife from each other is a slithering abuse of human rights. Glendora and Franklyn were caused unnecessary mental anguish as to each other's well-being. You can't imagine the worry there was about Franklyn. Counterclaim. At 11:30 a.m., 1.5 hours after his wife was wrenched from him, Franklyn saw her in handcuffs and saw her locked in a cell and broke down into tears. Just rage, shakes, and shivers. "We get attacked," he cried. "We press charges. Nobody does anything. I get socked in the jaw. I'm a veteran. I'm 78. Counterclaim. It is mental anguish to see one's husband beaten by brutality to this mental state and to be handcuffed and called unable and celled and be unable to administer to him. Counterclaim. The floor of the cell was dirty. The plumbing was defective. Counterclaim. Glendora had to urinate and defecate in plain view of passersby. Counterclaim. Violation of human dignity. The cell was cold. Glendora already had a serious head cold, and the cell cold was agitating the same. Counterclaim. As Glendora's notepad and pen were stolen from her, so were her hat, coat, and mittens. There was no need to keep her in a cold cell without her hat, coat, and mittens. Counterclaim. More police state brutality. Glendora had to ask 55 times to make a telephone call. 55 times she was denied this right. Counterclaim. Then she was grilled as to the person she wanted to call. "You just can't call anybody you want." Counterclaim. And at this time, Glendora does not know what she is charged with and is being illegally detained. Remember, Glendora's briefcase of papers had been stolen. from her by these three thugs, Kwiatkowski, Jill, and Peter. She has to find the telephone number of the person she needs to call. 4 times she attempted to go through her papers when the briefcase was snatched from her. 4 times she was screamed at and bullied by Jill Doe that you can't touch those papers. Counterclaim. So Glendora voluntarily walked back to the dirty cell. Finally, after renewing her right to make a telephone call for the 55th time, Glendora was able to go through her papers. Counterclaim. No cause to separate Glendora from her papers. And called a person for help. Related, you remember that nice guy, Kwiatkowski, going to help us prosecute Bruiser Ken? Made a 10 a.m. appointment with us, you remember that? Well, he arrested us. Yes. Handcuffed us. Put us in a cell. Violated our civil rights. You have to help us. That is up to page 10. And that completes another program. And this is chapter 5 of the bruiser Ken H, Mildworm, beating up a 68-year-old woman and a 78-year-old man because they asked for a receipt for their recorder at the Uniondale courthouse. The next chapter 6 will be probably on a different cable TV system. Franklyn, who was that on the telephone?
Americans for
Legal report. And what did he tell us? Go ahead, tell the folks what he said, please.
He called to, this is Franklin Buell, incidentally. He called to tell us that the article rebuttal against the one-sided complaint that they printed on Friday was in the paper this morning, Monday, and